Zelda has always hidden its darkest stories in plain sight, not in cutscenes, but in abandoned homes, scattered bones, and architecture that tells you exactly what happened if you stop long enough to look. Today, I'm breaking down every hidden trauma the series buries in its world design, starting with a village that looks adorable until you realize why it survived. Hayteno Village might be the most quietly tragic place in Breath of the Wild, and nobody notices because the music is so aggressively cheerful. Colorful houses, friendly NPCs, a nice dye shop, lovely stuff. But here's the thing, Hotno survived the calamity because Fort Hotno held the line 100 years ago. The soldiers who fought there were slaughtered so completely that the fortress is now a ruin, surrounded by decayed guardians, half buried in wildflowers. Every sunny morning in Hotno exists because of a massacre just down the road. What makes it worse is how completely the village moved on. Kids run around playing. Farmers complain about the weather. Nobody's standing at the fort holding a memorial. Talk to any NPC and they'll chat about shop inventory and local gossip. The calamity isn't a wound here. It's wallpaper. That's the real trick Breath of the Wild pulls. The village is perfectly fine, the fort is a graveyard, and the distance between them is about a 5-minute walk. But if you think living next door to a massacre site is unsettling, wait until you see what Twilight Princess hid inside a frozen mansion full of bones. The Snow Peak Ruins. Most dungeons in Zelda are ancient temples or cursed caverns. Snow Peak Ruins is someone's house, and that distinction changes everything. Twilight Princess drops you into a vast mansion buried under perpetual snow, spanning roughly 15 major rooms across 3 floors. This wasn't built as a fortress or a shrine. It was a home. A big, elaborate, wealthy family's home, complete with bedrooms, kitchens, and living quarters. And every single one of those rooms has bones in it. Skeletons are scattered throughout in positions that are way too contextual to ignore. One is lying in a bedroom, clearly having died in their sleep. Another is slumped near a cooking area. Others are positioned in hallways, as if the people simply grew too weak to keep moving and just stopped. The sheer accumulation turns every new room into a quiet confirmation that nobody made it out. But here's where it gets unsettling. 2 Yetis, Yeto and Yetta, have made this place their home. A married couple cooking soup in the kitchen, completely surrounded by the skeletal remains of everyone who lived here before them. They moved into a mass grave and just started decorating. Yeto even sends you on fetch quests for soup ingredients while you're stepping over bones in the hallway. The residents didn't die fighting monsters, they froze to death in their bed, and the Yetis just kept making soup. But if a frozen graveyard disguised as a cozy domestic scene unsettles you, wait until you see what Hyrule built on purpose in the desert. The Arbiter's grounds. Hyrule has castles, temples, and sacred springs. It also has a government-operated execution facility buried in the desert, and nobody in the kingdom seems particularly bothered by that. The Arbiter's grounds in Twilight Princess isn't a dungeon in the traditional sense. It's a prison complex. Approximately 14 major chambers arranged in a layout that functions exactly like an institutional facility designed to process human beings from intake to death. You've got isolated holding cells, you've got torture chambers, you've got wide open execution ground. These aren't random rooms connected by hallways, they're stages, a prisoner's journey from incarceration to termination, laid out with the architectural precision of someone filling out a work order. And that's the part that makes your skin crawl. This wasn't chaos, this was bureaucracy. Somebody sat down, designed these rooms, and assigned each one a specific purpose. The spike traps, the crushing mechanisms, the drowning hazards, they're all arranged in systematic sequences engineered to extract maximum suffering. This wasn't a monster's lair, it was a workplace. But here's where it gets worse. The undead enemies roaming the Arbiter's grounds aren't random spawns. They appear to be the reanimated remains of executed prisoners, spirits bound to the location in a state that's neither fully dead nor able to leave. They're stuck, wandering the halls of the place that killed them, which is, not ideal. The Arbiter's grounds doesn't just contain death, it manufactures it, files it, and apparently never lets it go. But if you think a desert prison is unsettling, wait until you see what's hiding underneath a quiet village well, the bottom of the well. Kakariko Village is one of the most peaceful locations in all of Ocarina of Time. Kids running around, chickens doing chicken things, a nice windmill spinning in the breeze. It's lovely. And directly underneath it is a torture dungeon. The bottom of the well descends about 15 chambers deep into a structure that was deliberately built for one purpose, making people suffer. We're talking cell-like rooms, restraint mechanisms, spike trap, crushing walls, and drowning hazards, all arranged in sequences that feel less like a dungeon and more like a checklist of ways to extract information from someone who really doesn't want to give it up. This isn't chaos, this is infrastructure. Someone sat down and designed this place with intention. And then there's Deadhand. Lurking in the deepest chamber, in near total darkness, is a creature made almost entirely of dismembered hands rising from the ground, connected to a pale central body that looks like it was never supposed to exist. It's one of the most disturbing enemy designs Nintendo has ever produced, and it lives underneath a town square where children play, not in some ancient ruin across the map, not in a cursed forest nobody visits. Under the village, the residents of Kakariko go about their daily lives with zero awareness that directly below their feet is a facility purpose-built for systematic horror. Which raises a fun question. Who built it, and did the villagers ever know? But if the well is where the torture happened, wait until you see where the results ended up. The Shadow Temple. Here's where things stop being subtle. The Shadow Temple in Ocarina of Time isn't hiding its trauma in the background. It's screaming it at you from every wall, every corridor, every single chamber designed to make you deeply uncomfortable. Skull imagery everywhere. Coffins lining the halls. Actual torture mechanisms built into the architecture, like someone drew up blueprints for suffering and handed them to a construction crew. But here's the thing. The Sheikah built this. The Sheikah, the wise protectors, the sacred guardians of the royal family, the tribe that Zelda herself trusts with her life. And they maintained a massive underground temple dedicated to shadow magic, death, and institutionalized torture. That's not a villain's lair. That's a government black site run by the people you thought were on your side, and the location makes it worse. You enter through the Kakariko village graveyard, regular funerals happening on the surface while something considerably less wholesome was going on underneath, which is, not ideal. Then there's Bongo, a creature so powerful it eventually broke containment and terrorized the village above. The leading theory is the Sheikah created it through their experiments with dark forces, essentially manufacturing a supernatural horror they couldn't control. They built the cage, filled it with something terrible, and lost the keys. The Shadow Temple isn't evidence that evil exists in Hyrule. It's evidence that the people trusted to protect Hyrule were running a shadow operation the entire time. And if that's what the protectors were doing, it makes you wonder what everyone else was up to. Speaking of things you really don't want to think about too hard, let's talk about what happens at Romani Ranch. Romani tells you exactly what's going to happen. She describes the creatures, the lights, the night they come, and what they want. She's a child warning you about something that sounds completely insane, and the game gives you every reason to believe her, because she's right. On the first night, ghostly figures descend from the sky. Small, floating creatures with no clear origin drift toward the barn in formation, moving with a quiet, mechanical purpose that feels fundamentally wrong for a Zelda game. They're after the cows. Fight them off until sunrise and everything's fine. But if you fail, they take the cows. And on the second night, they come back for Romani. Not killed, taken. When she eventually returns, she's not the same person. Her eyes are blank, her speech is hollow, her memory completely erased. She can't tell you what happened because she genuinely doesn't know. Her entire personality rewritten overnight. Her older sister Cremia notices, you noticed. Romani doesn't. Here's where it gets dark. The game never tells you what those creatures are, never explains where they came from, what they did to her, or why they targeted a ranch in the middle of nowhere. You're left with the same helpless confusion Romani herself lives with, except you saw it happen, and she didn't. That's the horror, not the abduction, the aftermath. A child walking around with trauma she can't name, can't remember, and can't process. Many fans interpret this as a deliberate allegory for real harm inflicted on children, the kind where the victim can't articulate what was done to them. The game gives you zero closure on purpose, but if you think that kind of quiet devastation is as bleak as Zelda get, the Great Plateau has a ghost who's been watching his kingdom rot for 100 years. The Great Plateau. Here's a fun thought experiment. Think back to the first time you played Breath of the Wild. You wake up in a cave, you stumble outside, and there's this friendly old man hanging around a campfire. He gives you advice, points you towards shrines, maybe trades you a warm doublet if you cook him the right dish. He's helpful, he's charming, he feels safe, he's been dead for 100 years. The old man is King Rome Bosphorus Hyrule, the last king of a kingdom that no longer exists, and every single ruin you walk past on the Great Plateau is a piece of his failure. The crumbling temples, the collapsed fortifications, the overgrown command posts, those aren't just set dressing for a tutorial area. They're the bones of a civilization he was supposed to protect, and he's been standing in the middle of it, watching for a century, unable to rebuild, unable to leave, unable to do anything except wait for you to wake up and maybe fix what he couldn't. That's not an afterlife. That's a prison sentence. The Great Plateau isn't a starting zone. It's a ghost story you didn't realize you were inside of. Every shrine you unlock, every enemy camp you clear, you're doing it under the silent observation of a dead king, haunting the ruins of his own kingdom. And the moment he finally reveals himself, every interaction you had with him gets recontextualized. The warmth, the patience, the gentle guidance. That wasn't kindness, that was desperation. 100 years of watching everything fall apart will do that to a person, which is, not ideal, but at least King Rome got to keep his form. The next entry involves someone who wasn't nearly that lucky, the Deku Butler's son. At the very beginning of Majora's Mask, before you even understand what kind of game you're playing, you walk past a twisted tree. It has a face, it looks like it's screaming, and most players walk right past it without a second thought. Here's the thing, that tree is a person. Specifically, it's the Deku Butler's son, a young Deku scrub, who was transformed against his will into that gnarled, frozen thing you see in the opening hours. The transformation wasn't quick, it wasn't painless, and it wasn't reversible. His body disintegrated into plant matter while something that might still be him remained trapped inside. This is a Nintendo game. The game never confirms whether consciousness persists during the metamorphosis, but it heavily implies it. The face on the tree isn't peaceful, it's contorted. It looks aware. The idea that this kid might still be in there, feeling his body harden into bark and root, unable to scream or move, is the kind of body horror you'd expect from Cronenberg. Not from the company that made Kirby, but the real gut punch isn't the son, it's the father. The Deku butler spends the entire game in quiet psychological collapse, searching for a way to undo what happened. He's not angry. He's not vengeful, he's just broken. A father watching his child become something inhuman with zero ability to stop it, and the game refuses to fix it. You can save Termina. You can stop the moon. You can help dozens of people across Clocktown, but you cannot save the Deku butler's son. The twisted tree remains exactly where it is when the credits roll, a permanent monument to suffering that no amount of heroism can undo. Zelda rarely makes you feel this helpless. But if you think one lost soul is hard to process, wait until you see what happens when an entire kingdom refuses to stay dead. Ikana Canyon. Ikana Canyon isn't scary. That's the first thing you need to understand, because that's exactly what makes it so devastating. Majora's Mask dedicates an entire region of its world, not to a dungeon, not to a boss fight, but to death itself, and it presents death not as something evil or punishing, but as simply a place you end up. Ikana Canyon is where the dead live, and they're not monsters. They're people. The canyon is populated almost entirely by undead creatures, skeletal warriors, ghosts, and supernatural entities. Living inhabitants are the anomaly here. You walk into Ikana, and you're the weird one. Everyone else has already died. They're just still here. Here's where it gets genuinely sad. The dead in Ikana aren't mindless. They've organized themselves into a functioning civilization with its own social hierarchy. Spectral warriors relive their old battles on loop, not because they're aggressive, but because that's all they remember. A ghostly community repeats the same destructive patterns that probably killed them in the first place. An old musician simply sits and waits, not for rescue, not for a hero, just for death to finally finish what it started. The geography is deliberate. Ikana is separated from the rest of Termina by progressive zones that slowly reveal the region's true nature. Crossing into Ikana feels like stepping over a threshold into somewhere fundamentally different, a place where mortality isn't a threat looming on the horizon. It's the only certainty, and the series never asks you to fix it. There's no cure death quest, no magic item that restores Ikana to its former glory. The canyon simply exists as the Zelda franchise's quiet, devastating answer to the biggest question it ever dared to ask. What if death isn't an enemy to defeat, but just a place? But if Ikana proves that Majora's Mask understands death, nothing proves it understands love. Quite like what happens between two people trying to get married while the moon falls. Anju and Cafe. This is the one that breaks people. In Majora's Mask, there's a side quest most players never find on their first playthrough. It follows Anju, an innkeeper in Clocktown, and her fiancé, Cafe, the mayor's son. They're supposed to get married, but Cafe has been cursed into a child's body and his wedding mask has been stolen, so he's gone into hiding out of shame while Anju waits at the inn, not knowing if he's alive or dead. And the moon is 3 days from destroying everything. Here's what makes this one hit different. If you complete the quest, track Cafe down, recover the mask, and reunite them. They come together in the final hours before impact, not in a temple, not in safety. Around 4 a.m. on the last day, while the ground shakes and the sky splits open. Two people choosing to hold each other while the world literally ends around them. And the game doesn't make it dramatic. You walk into the room. They exchange the mask. They embrace. That's it. You can still play the Song of Time and stop the moon. But they didn't know that was going to happen. In that moment, they were choosing each other over everything, fully believing it was the end. If you ignore the quest, they both die. No cutscene. No acknowledgement. Most players never even know they existed. That's the thesis of this entire video. Zelda hides real human trauma in the background. In side quests, you can skip. In rooms, you don't have to enter. In stories, the game never forces you to witness. And the most devastating example in the entire franchise is a reunion nobody has to attend, performed in defiance of an ending they fully believed was coming, between two people whose love outlasted literally everything else. Sometimes the most human moment in a game is the one it never asks you to see. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.